So Blake Lively is suing Justin Baldoni for occurrences that allegedly happened on their movie together, which no one knows what really happened. But what's interesting is I don't know that Justin Baldoni is a very wealthy man. And what is she suing for? She has infinitely more money than him. She hasn't tried to have him arrested for anything criminal. And the legal fees will probably bury him alone. So what is there to get is what I'm asking. Like, what is she asking for? This is complicated because isn't the studio, like the set, etc., the workplace, and this happened in the workplace. So she's only suing him, not the studio. I think it's interesting.
We're about to go over Blake Lively's lawsuit against Justin Baldoni. This is a very long lawsuit, so let's get into it. 4th, 2024, prior to resuming filming of It Ends With Us, the film, following the guild strikes and all hands meeting was converted to address the hostile work environment that had nearly derailed the production of the film. During this meeting, Mrs. Lively was forced to address concerns about Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's misconduct with them directly. Concern she raised was not only for herself, but also other female cast and crew, some of whom had already spoken up. During the January 4th meeting, the parties discussed in detail the inappropriate conduct that Miss Lively, her employees, and other cast and crew experienced at the hand of Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Some of the things that she's alleging is Mr. Baldoni ignored well-established industry protocols in filming of intimate scenes and exploited the lack of controls on the setup to behave inappropriately. She alleged that they placed performers in uniquely vulnerable situations and ignored safeguards, which include providing performance with appropriate notice of adult scenes and ensuring that the consent is given free of pressure or coercion. Without these provisions in place, Mr. Baldoni improvised physical intimacy that had not been rehearsed, choreographed, or discussed with her. She alleges that Mr. Baldoni discreetly bit and sucked her lower lip during a scene in which he improvised numerous kissings on each take. Mr. Baldoni insisted in shooting the full scene over and over again, well beyond what would have been required on an ordinary set without an advance notice or consent. Also alleged on another occasion, Mr. Baldoni and her were filming a slow dance scene where there was no sound. Mr. Baldoni chose to let the camera roll and have them perform the scene, but did not act in character as Riley. Instead, he spoke to Miss Lively out of character as himself, and at one point he leaned forward, slowly dragging his lips from her ear down her neck as he said, "It smells good." None of this was remotely in character or based on any dialogue in the script. Mr. Baldoni was caressing Miss Lively with his mouth in a way that had nothing to do with their roles. Miss Lively signed onto the movie role based on the draft of the script. Mr. Baldoni, without Mrs. Lively's knowledge or consent, personally added graphic content, including a scene in which Miss Lively was to act like she was pleasured on camera. Mrs. Lively said that she objected to these additions, but Mr. Baldoni insisted that he add them because he was making the film through the female gaze. Although he agreed to remove the scenes, he made a last-ditch attempt to keep ones in which the couples seemed pleasured together on their wedding, which he said was important to him because it reflected him and his partner's physical relations. Mr. Baldoni would then ask Mrs. Lively whether she and her husband had these same experiences in their physical relations. Blake Lively said during the scene where her character had to give birth, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath allegedly pressured her to be fully nude, despite no mention of nudity of this scene in her script or her contract or previous creative discussions. Mr. Baldoni insisted that she do this because his wife had ripped her clothes off during labor. Mrs. Lively became even more alarmed when Mr. Baldoni introduced his best friend to play the role of the OBGYN. And she said that this was very invasive and humiliating because this man's face and hands were very close to her private areas. Blake Lively also alleged that Mr. Heath approached her and her assistant on the set and started playing a video of a fully unclothed woman with her legs spread apart. Miss Lively thought that he was showing inappropriate videos and stopped him. Mr. Heath explained that the video was his wife giving birth, and Miss Lively was alarmed and asked him if his wife knew that he was sharing the video, to which he replied, "She isn't worried about this stuff," as if Mrs. Lively was weird for not welcoming it. Mr. Baldoni allegedly added a detailed scene to the film in which the underage version of Miss Lively's character, Lily, loses her you-know-what. In the book and the script for the film, there was no physical relation seen. Instead, the details about this moment were left to the audience's imagination. Mrs. Lively was informed that when this scene was shot, after Mr. Baldoni called cut, he walked over to the actors and said, "I know I'm not supposed to say this, but that was hot." And then said, "Did you guys practice this before?" Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath often spoke of their previous addiction to watching videos of intimate relations. Mr. Baldoni would allegedly often reference these videos to Mrs. Lively. Hoping to shut the subject down, she said to him privately that she had never seen it. Mr. Baldoni engaged in other behaviors that were shocking and emotionally distressing. For example, he claimed that he could speak to the deceased and on several occasions told her that he had spoken to her father who had passed away. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath were also constantly hugging and touching the cast and crew. When Mrs. Lively and others avoided this touching, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath would retaliate by becoming irritated, cold, or uncollaborative. Another day, Miss Lively wore a low-cut dress to facilitate the breastfeeding scene, but had covered it up with a coat. And the jacket briefly popped open to one point to reveal the dress. Mr. Baldoni commented about how much he liked her outfit. Later that day, Mr. Baldoni pressured Miss Lively to remove her coat in front of the crew and multiple background actors in a packed bar. He said he wanted to see her onesie under the coat because it was zipped low to reveal her lace bra. Would then say, "I think you look very sexy," in a tone that made her feel exposed. With other female cast present, she said, "That's not what I'm going for." And he replied, "I'm sorry, hot." She was deeply uncomfortable and said, "Not that either," and Mr. Baldoni responded sarcastically, "I guess I missed the HR meeting," and walked away. Another woman on the production spoke with Miss Lively afterwards to offer her empathy and share her own similar experiences with Mr. Baldoni, commenting about her in these terms. As a result of Mr. Baldoni's behavior, on May 29th of 2023, another cast member did a harassment complaint about Mr. Baldoni's gross and unwanted comments towards her and others. To make matters worse, when Miss Lively tried to have a meeting with Mr. Heath and the other producers to discuss Mr. Baldoni's unprofessional behavior, that meeting was turned into yet another violation. Rather than an ordinary meeting time and place, Mr. Heath arrived unannounced at Mrs. Lively's hair and makeup trailer, where she was topless and having body makeup removed by makeup artists. Mrs. Lively told Mr. Heath that she was almost done and they could meet once she was fully clothed. Mr. Heath, however, insisted that if she didn't allow him into the trailer to speak to her at that moment, that there would be no meeting with any of the producers. Miss Lively reluctantly agreed, but asked Mr. Heath to keep his back turned. Mrs. Lively noticed that Mr. Heath was staring directly at her while she was topless. Throughout the filming, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath invaded Mrs. Lively's privacy by entering her makeup trailer uninvited while she was undressed, including when she was breastfeeding her infant child. These are all the allegation parts in this lawsuit. I will go ahead and make a part 2 and upload all of this long lawsuit to my Patreon, Kadisha Lynn, if you do want to read the whole thing. But y'all let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments. Blake Lively said that her reputation was destroyed when she tried to out Justin Baldoni. This is the update to the lawsuit part 2. If you haven't watched part 1, it's where we go through all of the accusations that she made against Justin Baldoni. And now we're going to get into everything that she had to say about her reputation being destroyed. Blake Lively said that she had to stay with the talking points that were created and delivered by the film's distributor, who is Sony. That marketing plan directed the cast to focus more on Lily's strengths and resilience as opposed to describing the film as a story about violence, and avoid talking about this film that makes it feel sad or heavy. What the public did not know was that at the beginning of the multi-tiered plan that Mr. Baldoni and his team described a social manipulation designed to destroy Blake Lively's reputation. They were prepared to spend $100 million to ruin the lives of Blake Lively and her family. Mr. Baldoni and the Wayfair associates embarked on a sophisticated press and digital plan in retaliation for Mrs. Lively exercising her legal protective rights to speak up about their misconduct on the set of It Ends With Us. The plan of Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and others, which describe preparations and strategies should Miss Blake Lively and her team make her grievances public. They wanted to get ahead of this narrative. Miss Nathan's plan proposed strategies to advance misleading counter-narratives, including pushing Nathan's narrative that Miss Lively had a less than favorable reputation, and proposing to explore planting stories about weaponization of feminism. Later that day, Miss Abel and Miss Nathan exchanged the following text message expressing that Mr. Baldoni wants to feel like Miss Lively can be buried. Miss Abel and Miss Nathan agreed that of course they would do just that, but they could not say so in writing. These receipts say that they can't send documents over the work and they can't write this down to him. We can't write it down, that we will destroy her. Miss Nathan followed this by assuring Miss Abel, you know we can bury anyone, but I can't write that to him. A few days later, on August 5th, 2024, Mr. Baldoni set the narrative for social media campaign, sending Miss Abel a screenshot of a thread on X that has accused another female celebrity of bullying women. Mr. Baldoni stated that this is what we would need. And yeah, baby, she included these receipts too. This is what we would need. Yes, I literally just spoke to Melissa about this on break, about what we discussed last night for social and digital. Focus on Reddit, TikTok, and IG. On August 10th, the day after the release of the film It Ends With Us, Miss Nathan's team reported that they had started to see a shift on social due largely to Jed and his team's effort to shift the narrative against Miss Lively. And the receipts say, hi team, so far extremely limited pickup on the Daily Mail or Page 6. We will continue to keep an eye out and send pieces as needed, but so far it's been steady coverage on pure speculation. We've also started to see a shift on social due largely to Jed and his team's efforts to shift the narrative towards shining a spotlight on Blake and Ryan. Miss Nathan then bragged to Miss Abel that Mr. Baldoni doesn't realize how lucky he is right now, by which they were referring to the successful efforts to shut down stories that would have revealed how Mr. Baldoni's behavior, including his harassment on set, how he's made the cast and crew uncomfortable. And baby, these receipts ain't lying. Less than 1 week later, again, they bragged about how they shut down stories regarding HR complaints on set. On August 15, 2024, Melissa Nathan remarked that this went so well, it was genius. So okay, we have 4 major standing down on HR complaint. On August 16th, Miss Nathan circulated a Daily Mail article entitled The String of Hard to Watch. Videos that have surfaced following tone-deaf Q&A to promote It Ends With Us could tarnish 36-year-old star's golden Hollywood image for good. Miss Abel responded, wow, you really outdid yourself with that piece. Miss Nathan replied, "That's why you hired me, right? I'm the best." As their own words reveal, the purpose of the social manipulation was a plan twofold. It aimed to both conceal the pattern of harassment and other misconduct by Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and Wayfarer, but it also retaliated against Miss Lively by battering her image, harming her business, and causing her and her family severe emotional harm. Millions of people, including many reporters and influencers who saw these planted stories, social media posts, and other online content, had no idea they were unwittingly consumers of a crisis PR. This was a digital retaliation campaign created and funded by Mr. Baldoni and Wayfarer to hurt Miss Blake Lively. This is precisely the goal of this campaign: to light a fire, continue to stroke conversations secretly, blurring the line between authentic and manufactured content, and creating a viral public takedown. All of this is absolutely crazy, but y'all let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments.
Oh my. The more that I dig into Blake Lively's complaint against Justin Baldoni, the more that I'm just... There is so much in this complaint. Not a lawsuit yet. Lively filed a 10-claim complaint with the California Civil Rights Department. This is a move that's a precursor to a lawsuit. It is possible that the lawsuit might not happen if Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni come to an agreement. I obviously have no idea what an agreement would look like or what it would take for Blake Lively to not pursue a lawsuit, but even more new information that has not been made public yet, involving her husband and their children. As I previously shared, Blake Lively accused Justin Baldoni of a hostile work environment, of inappropriateness on many levels. He was not just her co-star, he was also the producer of the movie and director of the film It Ends With Us. She claims that he improvised kissing without consent. Eventually, they hired an intimacy coordinator. She claims that he confessed about having a corn addiction, that his producing partner showed Blake Lively inappropriate images, videos of his wife without clothes, that he would regularly talk about his conquests and his intimate relations, jokes that were inappropriate, etc., etc. Things were so bad that she demanded a letter, an agreement that Justin Baldoni would not retaliate against her if she resumed production on the movie, which had been halted due to the writer's strike. Well, in this legal complaint, Blake Lively alleges that retaliation did happen, that Justin Baldoni hired Johnny Depp's former fixer, his PR crisis manager, Melissa Nathan. She claims that they planted stories and manipulated social media to make her look bad, and it worked too well. So much so that Blake Lively, in her complaint, alleges the following. Quote, "The emotional impact on Miss Lively has been extreme, not only affecting her, but her family, including her husband and 4 children. There are days when she has struggled to get out of bed, and she frequently chooses not to venture outside in public. While she has fought to maintain her personal life and business interests behind closed doors, she has suffered from grief, fear, trauma, and extreme anxiety. She has also been experiencing repeated and painful physical symptoms as a result of this experience. Mr. Reynolds, too, has been affected mentally, physically, and professionally by his wife and children's pain. Worst of all, however, has been the impact on their young children, who have been traumatized and emotionally uprooted in ways that have substantially impacted their well-being. Boy, that is intense. Blake Lively's lawyers assert that she, quote, never sought out conflict with Wayfarer, Mr. Baldoni, or Mr. Heath, his producing partner. She alleged that both Baldoni and his producing partner would walk in her trailer while she was undressing, while she was breastfeeding, without permission. She never sought conflict, but instead consistently attempted to speak up for a safe and respectful workplace privately in the hopes of protecting herself as well as the cast and crew without jeopardizing a film that she believed could make a difference in people's lives. And a reminder, the cast told the film's distributor, Sony, that they were not going to do any press with Justin Baldoni, the director of the movie, the lead actor. And they didn't. And they sided with her. So they say that the reason for making this complaint is she was just trying to protect herself and the cast and crew. Quote, in response, Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and those working for them sought to destroy Miss Lively and anyone else who knew the truth. Miss Lively's discovery of the full extent of the retaliatory campaign launched by the Wayfarer parties has left her with no choice. Through this complaint, Miss Lively seeks to set the record straight, to hold the Wayfarer parties and associates accountable, and to shine a light on this new form of retaliation so that it will not be used against any others who seek to stand up and speak out against harassment. Oh man, wow. And the complaint also claims that she brought up her HR concerns many times and they were, quote, rebuffed repeatedly. Also, my belief is the reason she's not suing Sony, the film's distributor, is because Sony did not participate in the PR takedown, the astroturfing, I believe is the term, of Blake Lively. Astroturfing is, quote, the deceptive practice of hiding the sponsors of an orchestrated message or organization to make it appear as though it originates from and is supported by unsolicited grassroots participants. And that Melissa Nathan was the mastermind of the astroturfing. Whew, my brain hurts. All right, y'all, thoughts on everything? Let me know in the comments.
Let me tell you about my experience with Justin Baldoni. With all the chatter around This Ends With Us, I have just felt so called to speak to the type of person Justin is because I have known him and his family for over a decade. It says it all when it comes to his production company, and this is what I want to shed light on. Justin Baldoni started Wayfarer Entertainment by a way to make an imprint and a positive impact in this lifetime. I don't know if you've seen the first docuseries that he put out about my last days, but this docuseries shed light on people with terminal illness that have had such a positive outlook on this life and this hand that they were dealt. He continues to take on projects, and obviously bigger scale projects now, that have moving stories that can help positively impact someone else by shedding light on a situation. And this just so speaks and reflects to the type of character that Justin Baldoni has. And
If you haven't seen it yet, Blake Lively is suing Justin Baldoni for sexual harassment and running a smear campaign against her. They both starred in the movie It Ends With Us, if you were really out of the loop. But I want to say that I think everyone should support and believe Blake Lively in this. And it doesn't have to be a stand competition. It doesn't have to do with anything about how you feel about her, because that shouldn't really be relevant. Nothing that Blake Lively has done, I feel like, could convince anyone that it's like impossible for her to be the victim of like sexual harassment, or for him to just create a toxic work environment. Y'all don't know these people. You especially don't know that man. And to see people acting like all of a sudden they've always loved Justin Baldoni and that they're ready to go to war for him is quite crazy to me. He hired the same crisis PR manager as the pirate who shall not be named. So already off the bat, that's not giving innocent. Because of all the crisis PR managers, why would you pick the one who launched one of the most misogynistic and almost violent hate campaigns against a woman online? So seeing that low-key makes me think when that woman reposted that press thing that she did with Blake Lively from years ago, that journalist reposted that, I'm like, and knowing that that journalist is a fan of the pirate who should not be named, I'm starting to think that maybe that was a little bit more than coincidental. But that's just my tin hat tingling, okay? And it seems almost ridiculous to kind of like include in this the fact that like it doesn't matter if you dislike a woman or not. That doesn't make them less of a victim of something or unbelievable. I don't believe that someone as successful and business savvy as Blake Lively would launch a whole campaign without some substantial evidence. That just doesn't make any fucking sense. And it definitely seems a little weird for people, not just him and his team, but people themselves, to try to find a logical reason explaining all of the behavior that is like listed in the, like, what was happening behind set. Like, okay, maybe he's asking about her weight because he has to lift her up in his back injury, but some of these other things, there's no way you can find a logical reason for that. Zero. Like, it is kind of weird that this man could make this movie and then like all of you guys like project all of these thoughts onto him because you find him so hot that you therefore think that he's like this perfect man and father and husband and da-da. You don't know him. I don't know. I just heard about this man. I don't know this man. What? And I think with Blake Lively, it's, I don't want to say complicated because it's like the truth is that the internet does love to run a smear campaign against women, but then part of that smear campaign and reason a lot of people don't like her is because of the plantation ass wedding and that weird ass blog she had. But it's also just like, that's not necessarily relevant to this. It's not relevant to this. That in no way makes it seem like she's a terrible person, so therefore she can't be sexually harassed or no one can like treat her terribly. Those things have like, I don't want it to be like, oh well, you have to like Blake Lively. That's not what I'm saying. It's, you should believe Blake Lively because you should believe women, and especially in the state that we're in, we should be believing women. Like Twitter is acting.
I can't believe more people aren't talking about what Blake Lively did at the It Ends With Us movie premiere. This is Blake Lively, and she just recently went to the It Ends With Us movie premiere with her husband Ryan Gosling. And if you didn't know, Blake Lively stars as the main character in the It Ends With Us movie based on a true story. What they're not telling you though is that this is the dress that she wore to the event, and it just so happens to be the exact dress that Britney Spears wore in 2002 to a Milan fashion show. Not only is it the exact same style of dress, but it is the exact one that Britney wore, and Blakely purchased it hours before the premiere. According to this article, she spent over $10,000 to get this dress from Britney Spears. And all everyone is wondering, why on earth would she feel the need to purchase a dress that soon before an event, and why this dress specifically? Weeks after the premiere, her team finally released a statement saying the only reason that she had to purchase this specific dress the day of the event was because it was a perfect match to her color analysis. And in addition, the exact green beading in this dress matches her husband's suit perfectly. Blakely was actually the one to request the emergency color analysis test, and she told reporters that without the color analysis test, she would look completely washed out, and without knowing her best colors, she would not be getting all the positive attention that she knew she would if she wore the right colors. And all everyone's asking is, what did she use to find her color analysis that quickly before an event? And although Blakely has not spoken on it, everyone seems to think that she used this app right here that finds your color analysis in minutes. So if you don't know what your best colors are and have never had your color analysis done, I would recommend trying this app. Clearly, Miss Blakely knew what she was